So, Plasma 628 is now available, but what is the most efficient way to get there? This is part 1 of a 3-part series of videos on how to get to maximum Plasma 8 buildings and research efficiently. In this episode, episode 1, we will focus mainly on purification. My name is Chuck. I'm just your regular nerd who likes playing games, but I also like analyzing and crunching numbers, and this is where these two interests intersect. So Plasma 6 to Plasma 8 was released to our state recently, about 2 weeks ago now. I was looking at Teddy's videos and website on the Plasma 6 to 8 requirements to plan out my build. I also watched Catzilla's purification videos and plasma costs. While I agree with it in principle, I don't think it is as clean cut as just stopping at, say, 20 heat or 35 heat. But I do concede that Catzilla's recommendation is a very good starting point. However, I think there has to be a more efficient way for specific cases. The problem. So Plasma 6 to 8 just got unlocked in certain states, and in the next few weeks maybe in your state as well. If you are Plasma 4 or lower, I think you would have access to the regular plasma purification process, which basically converts regular resources into plasma cores. Otherwise, if you are Plasma 5, you would see the advanced purification option in that building, which basically gives you the ability to convert regular plasma cores into polymerized plasma, or I'd like to call it polymers for short. The costs go up the more you use it at certain brackets. So we have the first 20, then the 35, 50, and finally 70. Again, Catzilla's video does a very good job explaining efficiency and costs, and I believe it would serve you well in letting you figure out where to stop. Luckily, the heat resets weekly, and every single day there's a discounted cost on the amount of plasma cores that it would take to convert into polymers. So there's 2 avenues of savings. Now this begs the question, what if you are impatient and you have a lot of plasma cores saved, a lot of plasma cores to burn? What's the best course of action here? Now, in order to answer that previous question, you must first understand that this is some sort of a lottery. There are costs involved, there are chances involved, probabilities. Enter the probabilities table. So if your goal is to figure out whether it is worth it to go to a certain amount of heat or not, then you need to be aware of the probabilities. By surveying several lovely people in the state, I managed to figure out the probabilities per heat level, because it changes per heat bracket. You'll basically find it if you tap on the question mark on the top right corner of the purification building. And here is the table. For the next step, I wanted to figure out the mean distribution of polymers based on those odds. Applying some statistics and maths, this is what I've got. It will look confusing and daunting at first, especially if you don't know what those numbers mean. So let me break it down for you. First off, heat and cost. That's basically the number of purification attempts and their associated plasma core costs. So the first 20 purifications would cost 20 plasma cores each. Then from 21 to 35, it costs 50 per purification, and so on. Then the purifications column is the number of purifications that you could do in that bracket. Say for the first bracket, 0 to 20, that means 20 purifications. Then the next one would be 21 to 35, that's another 15, and so on. The columns labeled 1 to 12 are the number of polymers that the machine would spit out every time you click on Purify. In the previous table, I presented the percent chance. So in this second table, I show the mean distribution. If you find this part hard to follow, you could safely ignore this for now. What I want you to look at is the average polymerized plasma. This column tells you how many polymers you would get on average if you complete that bracket. For instance, if you go from 0 to 20, you would get 42 polymers on average. Consumed plasma is pretty much how much plasma you feed into the machine. So the first 20 clicks are worth 400 plasma. The next 15 after that are worth 750. Then the next are 1.5k. Then the last 20 are worth 3,000 plasma. And finally, the cost per polymer is simply the total cost divided by the average number of polymers you can get. So the higher the number, the more plasma cores they cost. And in green, these are the totals. Since this thing resets weekly, if you purify 70 times per week, you can expect to get to around 206 polymers, and you would spend around 5,650 plasma if you do it in one go in a single day without waiting for the daily discount. Of course, you could expect those costs to go down if you take full advantage of that daily discount. A good way to go about this is to decide where you want to stop, what heat level, and count 6 below that. So if you decide to stop at 35, this means that you have to stop at 29 on the first day. That way, for the rest of the week, those days would give you a discount on the first purification that you do for that day. And if you keep doing that for the rest of the week, discounts. And that's the first part of my thesis. Now, the second part is the actual cost of upgrading those buildings. And of course, further down the horizon would be the advanced plasma research. Based on looking at Teddy's website, savagerygaming.com, and cross-checking with in-game values that I see in my state, we have found out the following values. Here's how much resources you would expect to consume if you wanted to fully upgrade to Plasma 8. That means all buildings, including the Plasma Institute. That's the total amount of resources you would need to upgrade everything. Now, 772 polymers, that's if you keep doing 70 purifications per week. And looking at the previous table, this means that you would have to do this for 4 weeks. So the earliest that you could fully upgrade all buildings to Plasma 8 would be 4 weeks. You're bound by the number of polymers that you could produce, and if you are solely getting that from your purification building, and there's no other event or bundle that provides it, then expect around 4 weeks. And again, the maximum weekly cost if you stop at 70 heat every week would be 5,650. For 4 weeks, that's over 22,000 plasma cores. And that's just the plasma cores needed to purify into polymers. If you count the 8,780 plasma cores, regular plasma cores needed, then that's over 30,000 plasma cores in all. If you somehow had 30,000 plasma cores laying around, then sure, do it. But wait, there's still advanced plasma research to think about. So the next table that I want you to look at would be the figures if you did all of the plasma research, advanced plasma research. This would take us to a grand total of 2,767 polymers, 7,128 plasma cores, 1.98 billion food, 1.98 billion wood, 396,000 metal, 112,000 gas. In terms of regular resources, it's not that bad, but look at those polymers. To put it roughly, whatever you spend on maxing of the buildings, you would spend 4 times as much just to maximize research. If your goal is to complete this ASAP, then it would be very expensive. Again, going back to Catzilla's purification video, if you stop at a lower heat, this means it would take more time, but it would consume less plasma cores, way less. One way to do it is to see how much plasma cores you could accumulate every week and maybe use that as a basis. That would be more sustainable. So purify that amount of plasma cores every week. But if you have a stockpile of plasma cores laying around, by all means, use them. But to end this video, I'd like to point out a third option, an option that I would be personally taking, and that is to maximize Plasma 8 headquarters and institute and ignore the rest of the buildings for now. If you do that, here's the resource cost. It would cost you 402 polymers, 4,870 plasma cores, 1.57 billion food, 1.436 billion wood, 401,000 metal, 108,000 gas. Not that bad. If you take this route as well, this would mean that you would be able to get to Plasma 8 in as early as 2 weeks. I'll continue my analysis in the next part of this series, and in that video I'll be focusing on time versus money, and I'll see you then. Bye.